This program is made possible by a grant from Wachovia Bank and Trust Company.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. North Carolina People is over in Governor Hunt's office for this evening's visit, and we're so pleased that His Excellency would permit us to bring our cameras over for what is now getting to be an annual occurrence, Governor, and we're so pleased to see you again.
Thank you, Bill. It's a great tradition. I think one of the things I look forward to most all year is visiting with you at the end of the year. And I know that in the years ahead, as I have a chance to look back and go through all these, it's going to really be something to see what every year was like.
Well, we've saved them all so you can get the chance to look back over what you did. And this is the first year of your second unprecedented term as a governor elected to succeed himself. How's it going for you?
Well, I think it's going well, considering,
Certainly.
as we say. Considering what's happening in the country today. Mm-hmm. Now, as you know, Bill, I have always believed that basically you make progress when you have economic growth and good education. And I think you get economic growth when you have good education. This year, we have done a number of things to bring about stronger economic growth. And it's interesting, the more I look at these things, the more I realize how it's tied in with our public school system, our community college, especially our university system. I would point out to our fellow North Carolinians that this year we had the major big move into microelectronics. The legislature approved nearly $25 million for our microelectronics center, far greater investment than any state has ever made with public resources. That's well underway. We might want to talk about that some here this evening. We passed the Hazardous Waste Management Act, which will not only help industry be located and operate here, but also protect our environment and protect our people. We passed legislation and secured the funds to keep our highway system going. You have to have a good highway system if you're going to have jobs and industry come into your state. So all of those things are things that we did this year, even in a year that was tough economically, with inflation running at a very high level, as you know, just barely able to scrape through some salary increase for our very fine teachers and state employees, professors and instructors in our university system. So I think the year has gone well. We're continuing to move up in terms of our children in the public schools and their test scores. I think our universities have continued to become even more excellent. We're improving in skill training, but it's been done in a year when there's been an awful lot of scaling back. North Carolina's been fortunate this year, Bill. I have fellow governors around the country that have deficits in their budget of over $1 billion. One governor has had to call his legislature in 4 times to cut the budget.
That's right.
And so in light of these times economically, I think North Carolina's really had a good year.
We've been very fortunate, Governor, and now part of this emphasis on the economic growth and development of the state has been your efforts overseas, and you've just returned from the Far East, and in the papers this week, former Senator, now Ambassador Mansfield was quoted as saying that the future really lies in the Far East and not in Europe and the traditional places that we've turned. What did you find on this journey?
Well, I think that's true. I think all of us are now aware of the great miracle of Japan's economy, which incidentally we helped get started and helped finance in the early stages. I believe we're at the point now where we are realizing that Japan has hold of some things that we need to learn, particularly how you get people to cooperate in a company, not confrontation between labor and management, but a working together, a cooperation. It's interesting that management in Japan oftentimes comes out of the ranks of the employees. They have lifetime employment. We may or may not have that, although some fine companies in this country have it, such as 3M. And they have the quality circle concept that we are using here in North Carolina in a number of companies. So I find that Japan is the miracle everybody talks about. They continue to have low inflation and high productivity and high quality control and so on. Of course, on this visit, I also visited South Korea and Taiwan. In all of those visits, we were encouraging investment in the United States and especially in North Carolina, encouraging trade through our ports in North Carolina, Wilmington and Morehead City, pushing the sale of our agricultural products, including our tobacco, as well as our industrial products. And I found an ever-increasing and greater interest in investment here, especially in North Carolina. The Japanese, for example, are just beginning to discover the Southeast. They knew California.
Right.
They've heard of Chicago and New York. Now they're finding out about the Southeast. The Ajinomoto plant going up here in Raleigh has impressed them. I think we will have in a very few weeks one of the largest Japanese announcements ever made in this state and perhaps in several states, and I think there's going to be a lot more of that. The thing that excites me, though, Bill, is the opportunity for us to sort of put together the great resources we have here and the strengths of our economy, plus what they have. And I think basic to that is getting to know more about their country and their background and all of that, such as we're beginning to do through our Japan Center.
Right. Well, now let's come back home and the national economy today and the rate of unemployment, what we see in the recession. It's really not a very happy time, but we keep hearing the word turnaround. When do you expect to see this happen? And happily, as you indicated, our state has not been one that has had to suffer the way others have, but and we're grateful for that as the new year begins. But what about this turnaround idea we hear out of Washington?
Bill, I'm very concerned about our economy. We're going to be in not a mild recession, but apparently a deep recession. But the thing that concerns me so much is the fact that we are looking at such huge deficits. I think the estimate is that the deficit this year will be about $109 billion. They are now projecting $152 billion for the following year and $162 billion the year after that. Now, if the government's out having to borrow that much money in the capital market, I'm afraid that instead of inflation coming down and interest rates coming down and staying down, which is what is needed to have a good, strong, prosperous economy, inflation rates are going to take back off and go back up again. If that happens, of course, it'll completely choke off what we hope will be a very strong growth ahead. So I'm hopeful. I'm, by nature, as you are, an optimist. But I have to say that those huge deficits that are now being looked at as a result of the plans being carried through in Washington really concern me a great deal, and I hope that they'll get the economy straightened out there. We're doing the things we can do here, but monetary policy and fiscal policy and tax policy, that's made at the federal level by and large, and I have to say I'm very concerned, and I don't quite see how the thing's going to work out.
Well, now, as a part of your emphasis on what happens in our state, among many things you've done, two great ideas. You alluded to one of them a moment ago. Where are we with microelectronics? And I'll put the second question, the developments in biotechnology.
Well, Bill, you know that you've asked me the question that turns me on, and I'm just so happy to share this with our fellow North Carolinians because the things we're doing in this area, the things that I think they've wanted us to do, we do want to have a great future. We want to be one of those states that's reaching for the stars and moving ahead of the rest of them, and we're doing that in microelectronics. The legislature, when we talked a year ago, we had established the Microelectronics Center through the great leadership and the vision of you and Terry Sanford and some other good people. Since then, the legislature has funded it with, as I said, about $25 million. We are about to select a site in the Research Triangle and secure an architect for the buildings, the permanent buildings. We have two temporary sites we're working out of. We have a temporary site in the Research Triangle Institute that our computers are in. These computers are linked up now with all of the branches of the university that are a part of this and with Duke. So we're all operating as a part of that network already. We have two vice presidents that have been hired, both of whom have a fine scientific background with Bell Laboratories, one of the great research institutions in this country. We have 2 graduate fellowships in each of the 5 universities that are associated with it. University at Charlotte, A&T in Greensboro, North Carolina State, the University at Chapel Hill, and Duke. Each have 2 graduate fellowships, some of the best in the country in microelectronics. So all of these things are moving ahead. GE, of course, is moving forward with its own center that's being built out in the Research Triangle very close by. And while things have been a little level for this industry this year because of the recession and the tremendously high interest rates, I think we're positioning ourselves to really have North Carolina take off as a leader in this industry once this economy turns back up.
Well, this is one area where the Japanese, as you were citing their aggressiveness, they're trying to catch up with the industry in America, aren't they?
That's right. And let me tell you, Bill, one of the great stories we had to tell when we were over in Japan had to do with what we're doing in microelectronics and, of course, our Japan Center out at NC State, the only one funded by state resources in the country. But boy, when they found out what we were doing in microelectronics and the commitment of the state and how we're working, the universities with them, you know, and the universities participating in research, their eyes really popped open. And I think that's is going to cause a lot of interest in North Carolina that simply won't come to other states.
Well, I think you've moved this one along as aggressively as good judgment says. But now, biotechnology, you've got a man here too, a scientist who's running it for you, isn't he?
Yes, and that is new.
Yes.
You know, that was established, and you and President Sanford and I announced that back here about 3 months ago. As a result of, again, we don't jump into these things, but after about a year or more of investigation by our Governor's Board of Science and Technology, we concluded that it would be helpful if the very fine research that we're doing in this field at our universities could sort of be coordinated. We could have a group that could sort of focus the eyes of the country and the world on what we're doing here and help publicize what we're doing, maybe help us attract better faculty and researchers and what have you. So we've established this North Carolina Biotechnology Center, and one of the great research people in the world is heading it up. And we think this business, with all of the research and, you know, genetic engineering and gene splicing and the tremendous possibilities in agriculture and forestry and pharmacy areas and all of these fields, has a tremendous potential. Again, that's here, and I want our fellow North Carolinians to understand this. We can do this kind of thing and make it of great national and worldwide importance because we have excellent and outstanding universities and faculty members and researchers and laboratories.
Now, in both these instances, you're moving into very sophisticated instrumentation type industries. Does this mean that the time has come in North Carolina now when in our development we're going to get into this kind of thing in a more, in an accelerated way?
I think it very clearly does, Bill, and it has great implications for our state that people need to know about. First of all, it means that our young people in the public schools are going to have excellent teaching in math and science, as well as all the other areas. But we can't have, you know, second-rate laboratories now, where you don't really learn to carry through an experiment and how to do it. They've got to be good ones. We can't have a large proportion of our math teachers teaching out of field. They've got to be teaching in field, and we're going to have to train them, and we're going to have to be able to keep them.
That's exactly right.
We're going to have to work with industry on that. It means that in our community colleges, and we're already seeing this, many of them around in this research triangle area, and probably around Charlotte and Greensboro, Winston, High Point, and so forth, are finding that the courses that have to do with electronics and some of these other high technology areas, tool and die makers, for example, that the sign-up is 2 or 3 times as great as they can take. We're going to have more good modern equipment and that kind of thing. It also means, and I hope the members of the legislature who are watching will understand this, it means that we've got to have a budget for our university. President Sanford has to have that kind of support over at Duke and our private colleges and universities as well as public, that will enable us to have on our faculty, to have doing research with students and so forth, some of the most effective, best teachers and researchers available. It's no secret that Stanford University has spawned Silicon Valley.
That's right.
It's because they've got the great Center for Integrated Systems there. They've got those top-notch people. We've got a lot of them too, but we have to be able to keep them. And they can command the best salaries, and they've got to have assistants who work with them, and they've got to have very fine equipment and that sort of thing. So I see these university budgets as a real investment in our economy. And I want my fellow North Carolinians to understand that too. Not only for jobs, but for the kind of high-paying jobs, the best jobs, the jobs of the future that our people are going to need.
Well, I wish time would permit further questioning here, but I want to get around to a couple other things because we're moving along so quickly. You've recently been all over this country listening to people talk about government and the process of nominating and selecting our executives in government. I want to use that experience for two questions. First, what did you find the mood of the people to be about government today, and what are we going to do about this nominating process?
Bill, it's a little hard for me to say what the mood of the people is. I'm not sure that I read that fully. I believe, however, that it is sort of has two sides to it. First of all, the people do want government to work better. They want it to be more efficient. They want it to be more productive. They want less red tape and all of that kinds of things. And they do want it as close to the people as it can be, consistent with getting the job done. On the other hand, I think people are beginning to sense, especially as the economy begins to get in trouble, that, hey, there are some things that government ought to do. You know, we can't just get government out of everything and continue to have a strong economy and good schools and good roads and the things that induce industry to expand and to provide jobs, that there is a proper role for our government. And I think that is beginning to be felt. Just to give you a little example, the administration in Washington just announced that the Employment Security Commission program was going to be cut 12%. That comes on top of a 17% cut last October the 1st. That's the office that's supposed to be getting people into training programs, getting jobs for them, as well as handing out checks for the unemployed. That's cutting completely contrary to our efforts to get people jobs, see?
Right.
And so it doesn't make sense at all. I think people are beginning to become a little more, I think they sort of spoke out, you know, they were very angry about too big government and that kind of thing. Now I think they're beginning to say, well, yeah, we needed a change. We needed a course correction, so to speak, and we did, and I agree with that. We needed some cuts in the federal budget. But I think they're beginning to say now, well, wait a minute. Let's don't go too far. Let's have good government, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be involved in some things. So that's sort of the mood that I found. You ask about our process for selecting our leaders, our presidential candidate, and of course that ties in with my chairmanship of the Democratic Party Commission on Presidential Nominations. I find two or three things there. First of all, Democrats want to get our party back in what I call the mainstream. A little feeling that it's been a little too liberal, although we must remain committed to things like equal rights and affirmative action and full constitutional rights for women and help to those who've been disadvantaged and so forth. But basically the Democratic Party stands for economic progress and the working people and the farmer and the small businessman and all the rest. So there's a feeling of wanting to get sort of back in that mainstream. They'd like to shorten the nomination process somewhat, although we want to continue to have people involved in it. We don't want to put it back in the smoke-filled rooms. And we want to give the delegates a little more authority with regard to it. The candidates have run it too much in the past. And in the course of it, we want to try to strengthen the parties. That's been one of the things that's happened, I think, in both parties. And this is a concern not just to the Democratic Party, but the Republican Party, too. and I believe so strongly in a two-party system. That's how you have a good, stable democracy. But we hope that our party will come out strengthened, and I hope the Republicans will do the same kind of thing, so we'll continue to have a strong two-party system. If we can do some of this, and I think we can, then we will have sort of turned a corner, I think, and be headed back toward a system that I believe will serve our people better.
When you and your fellow Southern governors meet now, as you do very often, what problems do you identify as we look ahead now the next 10 years that have got to be looked at as a regional issue?
Bill, there are a number of them. First of all, the problem of poor people, people with insufficient economic opportunities, lack of enough jobs. That's the big one. Good jobs, economic growth make other things possible. Second, and very close to that, is the matter of protecting our environment. We can't have jobs at any cost. We do have to be concerned about continuing to have some good prime farm and forest land, clean rivers and beaches that we love so much, and mountains that don't erode away, and clean air without having acid rain that kills the forest and the plants and the rivers and so forth. We're concerned about that. I think we're concerned about those human resources, having good education and health care and all the other things that are involved. Finally, I would say, although perhaps we don't do enough of this, and I'm excited about the project that we've got underway that you're heading up, we're concerned about planning for the future and making sure that we don't swap our birthright for a mess of pottage, as it were, in terms of growing economically, that we don't lose the good quality of life, those wonderful things about our communities that have made us proud to be Southerners and think that we have a wonderful quality of life here. But may I just say, Bill, I think one of the most exciting things that's happened during this year, and we reflect at the end of the year about those things, is the North Carolina 2000 project. You're heading up the North Carolina Commission on the Future. And the big project of that commission is the North Carolina 2000 project. And I haven't seen anything come along in a long time. You've got about a 70-person commission, and then we've got groups in every county that are doing their own planning and feeding into your group. I think that's awfully exciting, and I'd just urge you to say a word to our visitors, our listeners, about what that's looking like right now.
Well, we've moved along at a pace that you set when we met in October, and we met again in December, and it's very interesting to see how these 64 people, who really are a very substantial cross-section of this state, consistently identify a list of 8 or 10 things that they want to see happen in this state. And it's a little premature, but sometime later on you and I'll do a special program on
that's
this.
a good idea.
But now, as you have looked at the state of North Carolina over these 5 years and led us all in some very significant things, you've always made education your number one objective. How do you feel about the progress that's been made? I've seen some of your statements recently which indicate we have done better. We are doing better in achievement tests and things like this. There's more to do?
There's a lot more to do. Of course, you know I'm never satisfied, Bill, and I never will be satisfied. I think if there's one thing, we believe in equality and opportunity, and that's what this land is about. And as we look at what's happening in Poland now, and it makes our blood boil, and we just chafe because we aren't free to go over there and do with our military might what we'd like to do, or it appears that way. But I want us to continue to have in our minds what was said by Charles Brantley Aycock, to provide for every person, especially every child, the opportunity to burgeon out all that's within them. We're on our way toward it, but we don't have any kids graduating unable to read and write now. We've changed that with our competency test. We have a lot of kids who drop out. And I want us to cut that way down, Bill. Other parts of the country have it, but North Carolina ought to cut it way down. And I think we're beginning some things, but we've got a long way to go. And I would just want to urge our fellow North Carolinians let's remain committed to public education. Gosh, that's the way to greatness as a state. That's the way for our children, our grandchildren, to have a good opportunity. That's the way to get people off of welfare and to ease those tax burdens, is by educating people and getting them to want to become something, to work hard and develop their talents and skills.
Well, now we've got about 2.5 minutes left, Governor, and this is the beginning of 1982. What would you say to all of us as the citizens of the state that we really need to commit ourselves to and get on with? You've indicated some here, but you got a little summation you want to give us all?
Well, I guess no governor would turn that down, Bill. Let me say that, and to my fellow North Carolinians, that 1982 is going to be a difficult year, and I don't want to mislead anybody. I don't know how deep this recession is going to be, but it's going to be deeper than was predicted by President Reagan. I don't know how well we're going to come out of it. I'd simply want to say to you that this is the kind of time that when you measure people. Now, maybe we're upset about some things that are happening in Washington, and I think some of them are ill-advised. But let's do the best we can with what we've got. Let's don't be satisfied with no progress. Let's have a state budget and programs here that are progressive, that do move us ahead. But let's don't leave it up to government either. To the businessmen and women who are watching us, we'd like to encourage your business to get involved. I know businesses that are helping tutor the children of their employees to make sure they can do well in school. I know some that are supplementing daycare for their children of their employees to make sure they get a good start in life. The churches who are watching us, help us in our efforts to try to cut down on juvenile delinquency next year by establishing programs like partners and volunteers to the court, that kind of thing. Let's get out and personally volunteer. I'm working in a dropout prevention program this year. Let's do those things that I know we can do to make this a better state. And that's my wish for next year, that all of us feel that it's our personal responsibility to make North Carolina a better place.
You have a deep sense of the faith of people in this process, don't you?
I do, and it's a well-placed faith, Bill, because we've done it since the time that these shores were settled almost 400 years ago. North Carolina's been a state that started out small farmers and people who worked in mills. We've always worked hard to make it a better place, and I just believe we're going to continue to.
Thank you, Governor Hunt, for allowing us to come to your office for this visit, and for all North Carolinians, we are particularly grateful to you and your good wife for the service you have so splendidly given.
Thank you, Bill.
This has just been wonderful. It's first rate. It's getting more and more.
This program was made possible by a grant from Wachovia Bank and Trust Company.